Hi, how are
Good,
you?
how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Absolutely. What time is it where you are?
Like four.
Okay.
Like,
So still a little bit of daylight.
yes, we've got, well, some. We've got maybe like 30 minutes of daylight left.
Yeah,
I'm so
we've got it's pitch black here, so I've got every single light in my house on to try to give me some sort of lighting here. But thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to have
Thank
you.
you so much. I know this has kind of been like such a disaster area on my part, making this happen. I'm so sorry about that, but I'm so excited to be here and, finally like in the flesh.
No need to apologize. I'm glad you're finally here. I'm glad we get to chat about it. And I was just telling before you jumped on that we are talking about Lost and Lassoed, which has been out for a month now, a month tomorrow.
On tomorrow.
So that's crazy that it's gone by that quickly.
It feels like I released that book like 6 months ago. I don't know where, like, 'cause I went on tour, I was on a deadline, like, I was really sick. Like, I've just lived 1,000 lives, I think, since November 5th. So it feels like a while ago, but also feels like yesterday.
Well, and I read it in June. So I feel like I don't know how early galleys usually go out, but that felt a little early to me. But I don't know. It does. It feels like
Yeah. The stretch between Swift and Saddled and Lost and Lassoed was pretty long. Galleys went out a little early, but we did it.
yeah,
It's happened. It's done. It's
you're
done.
here. Well, so let's start with kind of for people that don't know the concept of this series, and then maybe spoiler free-ish synopsis of this book.
Okay, cool. So, the Rebel Blue Ranch series is a small town Western romance series that takes place in unfortunately fictional Meadowlark, Wyoming. I consistently have to tell people that Meadowlark isn't real, but Meadowlark Lake is a real place that you could go to. And it follows the Ryder family and kind of everybody semi-adjacent to them. Our first book, Done and Dusted, follows the baby of the family, Emmy, then then Wes, the middle child, and then Gus, who is the star of the show at this point in time in Lost and Lassoed. And he is like, I don't know how to describe this man accurately because, yes, he's grumpy, but he is also just like made of marshmallow fluff and he's having a hard time. He's really stressed. And his heroine, Teddy, is a character that we've seen in the first two books as well, who we just like love and adore. And we know that these two really don't like each other. And so we start out Lost and Lassoed. Gus is having a hard time. Teddy's having a hard time. Everybody's having a rough go. And these two kind of come together because Gus needs help, Teddy needs a job, and so she babysits Gus's daughter Riley part-time over the week in the summer. And I think the best part of this book is like these two starting to like soften towards one another, and kind of like tearing each other's walls down, literally, figuratively, with barbs and jabs galore, but also a lot of sweet moments.
I love that. That's such I can tell you've done that a couple of times maybe of like describing this book because you did it so
That
perfectly.
That was actually a bad one. I stumbled through that for a second. I was like, what is this book about? I got it. We're fine.
We're good. We're all good. So, I love multiple POVs no matter what I'm reading, and that's how you have written this series. So, tell us a little bit about like your secret to capturing different characters' voices like so accurately to them.
Yeah, well, I write character-driven romance novels, which means that before I start writing, the biggest part of my writing process, that is actually the only part of it that's like a fine-tuned process, is getting to know these characters and what they like and what they dislike, what their motivations are, what type of toothpaste they use, like all of these things that only I would know about them, right? It's literally my job to know them the best, to know things about them that make it in the books, to know all of the things about them that don't make it into the books, stuff like that. And I think that makes it easier when I'm writing in their voice. I do find that, because I don't write chronologically, I do find, which is a disaster area, I should really stop doing that. That's just how my brain works. That I do oftentimes, like the first stuff that I write for them is really accurate to what I want their voice to be. And so then when I get towards the end of whatever I'm writing, and not necessarily the end of the book, because maybe I wrote that first, you never know. I find myself like once I'm at the end of my writing go back to the beginning of where I started to try to replicate that, because I always feel that the voice that I start with them um is that's my instinct and that's correct. So I try to push that through the whole story.
Well, I think naturally my next question has to be what kind of toothpaste do they
This is
use?
so good. I think that Gus, like, I think the whole Ryder family is like a Crest family. Like, I think that's a classic. But I think Teddy likes like Marvin's, like the fancy Italian toothpaste. And Gus is like, why are we spending $20 like ordering this toothpaste off the internet? And she's like, I like it. And so he's like, fine.
I love that. I could definitely see him being like just a baking soda type of guy with his toothpaste.
I think that Amos bought Crest growing up, so I think that's probably what all of them stick to. I think like Luke Brooks to me is probably like a Colgate guy. Ada, like I think Wes started with Crest and then Ada complained about sensitive teeth, and so now their household switched to Sensodyne without her knowing. He's just like, oh, I'm gonna take care of this. So yeah,
Well, I'm a Sensodyne girly, so I support that
me as
wholeheartedly.
well.
You mentioned Riley, who is Gus's daughter, and I love her. I'm sure that you've heard that a lot. She's just like such a force, and she is so much more than just like a secondary character. So, how did you approach like writing her and like her relationship dynamics? Because I imagine that's got to be a little difficult. I find like so often in single parent romances, they have a kid, but then it's kind of like just a part of it. It's not really like such an intricate part. So I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah, well, I think it's the same with like Riley is so important. And it's the same with like the writer family. Like I try to really like work on dynamics. Like dynamics are just a really important part of my stories. It's the same reason. Like I think a lot of times also in romances, men always say that they have best friends and then they never do anything that like displays friendship. And that's why like Luke and Gus are so important to me and why like they have conversations and they fight and they tease each other. But it's the same thing with Riley. Like every choice that I made in this book, right, and in Cam and Dusty's book, which comes out in April, like Riley was a big part of it. And so, like everybody, I mean, I don't know a ton about 6 year olds. I do have 27 first cousins, and I'm the youngest, and so I feel well. Maybe I do actually know like a decent amount about 6 year olds. I'm a very good babysitter, and so I think there's like stuff pulled from all of that, but Riley, like I've never thought about her as a secondary character. She's always been kind of like on the same level as Gus, Teddy, Dusty, Cam, Emmy, Luke, Wes, Ada. Like she's always just up there. Same with Amos and Hank. Like they all are just kind of fully developed in my brain, and that comes out when I'm writing them. Because I agree, like that's Riley wasn't something I ever wanted to forget about. Um, because she's important and she's a force and she is the perfect combination, I think, of her mom and dad.
I I can't wait for her mom's book. I'm very excited about that. We won't talk about that yet, but I think that she like knowing her as a character can only make you more excited to for the next book too. Kind of like, what you were saying, she's a perfect combination and she's so
Yeah,
great. So um well, these two main characters, they are just so used to taking care of other people and really not asking for anything in return. And I think, like obviously that can become pretty lonely. So, why was that an important part of both of their personalities? And do you think that it was like kind of like calling to like in terms of they finally recognized that in one another?
yes, totally. I think like this is so important to me. It's important to me to have things that connect characters, and I say on the surface that Lost and Lassoed is a opposites attract romance, but very soon, after these two kind of start to soften towards one another, I think it becomes very obvious that it's more of like a twin flame situation. And I think, as we've watched Gus and Teddy through the first two books, just kind of like boom, 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 I think we know that they're more alike than they are different. And so it's very fun to get into their like their perspectives and watch each other figure out that this other person is like a lot like them. And so, yeah, I don't necessarily like opposites attract is a good, like, this is what I'll give you first. But I do think that these two are more of a twin flame. I think that their motivations and their desires to take care of each other and their families and all of that is really what like brings these two together and connects them and knits them together in a way that is unique to their love story, right? Because without this connection point, they can fall in love with anyone. But that this their desire, this care, the way that they love, their big hearts are kind of the thing that make these two perfect for each other.
Well, you do talk about how, and obviously this is a Western romance, and so is the whole series. Um, Much like, billionaire, mafia, not every reader has experience in like those types of settings. So, how do you connect with readers and get them interested in something that maybe they don't have experience with in their everyday life?
Yeah, well, I think, like with any romance, I think there are themes that are universal. Like love is a universal thing, friendship, emotions, like um it's just we're lucky in romance that we get to play on this thing that the world is familiar with. Everyone is familiar with some type of love, whether they've experienced it, they've watched a movie, right? Like we get to play on love, but I think for me, for my environment, I always say that Rebel Blue Ranch and Meadowlark is kind of a love letter to the people and the places that built me. And my hope is that my love for all of those things creates this really lovely atmosphere that makes people want to be a part of it. Like, right, like we want to come home to Rebel Blue Ranch. We want to exist there. We feel safe there. And that's something that I really prioritize while writing. And I hope that it comes through, even if you don't like horses. I got this note when I was doing my signed Lost and Lassoed pre-order. Somebody had left a note in the comments that the bookshop had, like, that they put on a spreadsheet, they printed out. I signed people's names, right? And it said like, I don't know what to ask for my personalization. I also don't know why I like these books. I'm afraid of horses, but I love Rebel Blue Ranch. And I was like, perfect. You belong here. I think there's just something for everybody there. And hopefully it's a place that like people can come, feel safe, loved. They can smell the coffee that Amos has in the pot at the big house, and they'll always have a place to hang their hat, whether that's a cowboy hat or a beanie or a baseball hat or whatever it is.
I love that so much. And yeah, I think that it connects with people on such a special level. And kind of in that same vein, when I started it, I was almost immediately overwhelmed with how obvious it was that this story is just so much deeper than a romantic love story. It's, about friendship and families and daughters and fathers. And so then, you do share at the end a story about your dad. And I would love to talk about that a little bit and understand why it was so important for you to write something so deeply connected to you personally and to your dad.
Yeah. Well, first things first, I'm a soft girl. It is impossible for me to separate my feelings from almost anything, which is sometimes a bad thing, but sometimes it works out. The first draft of Lost and Lassoed structurally is like exactly as you see it today. But like the book's art definitely came from my dad. Like there's so many pieces of him in this story. There are like so many pieces of me. There's pieces of my brothers and my mom. Like this story became so much bigger than just um, a romance between these two people. And I think like in all of my books, like I hope that there's this feeling of something bigger, but this one in particular was really hard for me to write the first draft. I really struggled with Gus and Teddy. I really struggled with the weight of expectation that came with these two because they are so beloved and everybody's been so enthusiastic and waiting for them. And so I think it's this combination of like I struggled hard. I was really questioning my confidence, my abilities to write. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. And then also struggling like personally with my dad and a medical situation that my family had last year. And these two things together, I felt like ass, and it all kind of translated because at the end of the day, I felt bad. I was having a hard time, but I thought about the people and the places that had always been there for me. And I thought, and you know, the main person that's always been there for me, I'm the only girl in my family, is my dad. And so it became a really, really special story because I did make every single edit in this entire book in a hospital room because I am the only kid in my family without a real job. So I was the only one who could sit there with my dad all day. And I'm so grateful for that time that I had with him. And I'm so grateful that I had like that space to really kind of push myself, push my writing, and continue to like press on the ground of this story a little bit deeper until I could just like start digging and find stuff. So it was really special. It was really hard. My dad still has not read the entire essay that's at the end about him. He starts and immediately starts crying and like has to put it away. So maybe someday he'll read it. Maybe I'll like make him listen to the audio. I'll like slap a pair of headphones on him and be like, because this is for you. But he's really proud, and I'm really. It's for a book that was so hard for me to write at first. It's really special to me to have it connected to my favorite person on the planet.
I love that. And I think I think as readers, we're so appreciative that you were willing to even share that story because you could have just like not told us that inspiration, but you really like opened up your heart and told us about that. And I think that makes it even more special, like as we're reading it to know like there's so much deeper there. So thank you for doing that. I do want to kind of jump back to what you were saying about just that pressure to write Teddy and Gus and how yeah, people are so excited, which is exciting, but that also means, oh my God, what am I? I can so mess up here potentially. So how did you do it? How did you like push through? I mean, obviously your dad, but is there more to it that kind of just like helped get you through it?
I'm stubborn. I'm very, very stubborn. And so this was my like mountain that I overcame with Gus and Teddy is um I we kind of have to go back to talk about this. So when I first published on Undusted, I had no clue that like Gus and Teddy were the thing that people were going to kind of like double click into. Because in my mind, as you know, the author who just wrote her first book, Wes gets all the plot set up and done and dusted, right? Him and Emmy literally go to Baby Blue. They start cleaning it out. Like to me, I was like, yeah. But Gus and Teddy have some tension in that first book. And so by the time Done and Dusted came out, and then when everything snowballed and things started getting really crazy for me, I was about halfway through Swift and Saddled, and I was getting just inundated with, we don't want this, like we don't want this story, like we thought Gus and Teddy were coming next. I was getting really inundated with that in like emails and DMs and tags, and it's very kind, right? It's very excited, but it also is like I felt like Wes and Ada were already disappointing people before they even had a chance to fully exist because it wasn't the story other people wanted. I was going with my original plan, but I did continue my original plan because I wrote this down on a sticky note. I have a plan. Like, this is what I'm doing. This has always been the plan. So then I get through Wes and Ada. It's great. I give Gus and Teddy a non-volatile interaction in a book. There's an arm touch in Swift and Saddle that's very important to, I think, making their love story kind of believable. And so I start writing Gus and Teddy. They've been living in my head for a year at this point. And I went, oh my God, this is actually really scary. This is really, really hard because Wes and Ada, like, there was like no expectations there because nobody really like knew that they were, I knew, but like nobody really knew that they were coming. And so I like the weight of that expectation was so heavy. And I think it comes down to like Gus and Teddy taught me such a valuable lesson in sticking to my guns, because then all of a sudden I'm writing this and this like preliminary small outline that I wrote a year earlier, before Done and Dusted was done, before Swift and Saddled existed, before Lost and Lassoed even had any semblance of I didn't even know if I was going to make it that far in indie publishing, right? I had a plan for what I wanted this book to look like, and I was worried that that plan wasn't going to be enough. But like Gus and like Teddy, I'm stubborn and I stuck to my guns and I wrote the book that I knew that I wanted to write for them, and it became bigger and deeper and it snowballed. And I'm so grateful, but I'm so grateful that I knew these two well enough to tell the story that I wanted to, and that was a really soft and endearing love story between two hot-headed people.
Well, I also think it makes sense too because like Cam's story next, it makes sense chronologically,
I
which
have a plan.
obviously you knew.
I have a plan. Um, and I like my plan was correct. Like I will never be like, oh, maybe I should have. No. Like Gus and Teddy were meant to be number three. Wes and Ada were meant to be number two. We were meant to start with Emmy and Luke, and Luke and Cam separately were supposed to bookend this series. That's always been the plan, and I'm grateful that I stuck to it. And it's amazing that we get to place the final piece of that puzzle here in a couple of months.
It's gonna be so exciting. I can't believe it's a couple of months. That's crazy.
Me neither, sister. I'm like just gonna be recovered from Lost and Lassoed, and then it's like, get out there, Wild and Wrangle's coming.
Go ahead, it's time to go.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of mentioned how things got really crazy for you. So you started out indie publishing and then you got picked up by the Dial Press, which is so exciting. And then it got picked up for TV. So that's crazy. So what is that like? Like, how did that even happen and what has it been like?
I don't know how that happened. I released on Undusted June 6th, 2023. So I've been publishing for 18 months, baby, 19 months. Um, but Done and Dusted took it. It did the thing that Done and Dusted did, which was crazy. And my now editor at the Dial Press, reached out to me about 2 weeks after Done and Dusted came out. I did not have an agent yet. I didn't have anything. She had seen Done and Dusted in the Kindle Top 100 and really liked the cover, and read it and felt something and felt connected to it and felt excited about it. And so she emailed me, and I'll never forget like getting that email, and I like screenshotted it and sent it to all my friends being like, at penguinrandomhouse.com, like that's the email domain, like this is crazy. And I talked to her and we talked for like 2 hours. She's very passionate. Like I love my editor. She's the best ever. But she was just really passionate about my stories. But real words I said in that call were like, yeah, I'm not interested in going trot with Rebel Blue Ranch, but like I can pitch you some other story ideas at a later date. And I got my agent. Her name's Jess. A couple of days later, and we just really connected. And um, when I got the offer from Penguin, my agent like took me through it very, very logically, and we weighed a lot of pros and cons, but ultimately it's been the best decision ever. My editor is like the greatest. Like she believes in. I want to believe in me the way that she believes in me, and she pushes me to write better books every time. So that's been crazy, and it's just like I feel like every time, like I'm like, okay, we're gonna slow down, like everything's fine, we're gonna plateau. We just keep rolling, which is exciting, and I'm really, really grateful for it.
That's so funny that you said you're not
Yeah,
interested. I'm sure your agent was like, let's talk about
I
this.
said that multiple times. So
Well, I can say that like my husband is totally to get all the credit because we go through Barnes and Noble like once a week together, and he's not a reader, but he loves taking pictures of covers, and he saw the Dun and Dusted cover and he was like, "Can you read this book because I love the cover so much?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." And so that's how I became a fan. So kudos to the cover, but
yeah,
also the
cover
in
done by Austin Drake at Bottle Cap Creative on Instagram. She's phenomenal, and I'm so happy that we have the relationship that me and Austin have. She's the best. She's a dear friend, and I'm so grateful for
well,
her.
and I don't know if you were the first to do it, but it seems like so many more people are like doing that style of cover now. So, I mean, it's doing something.
I mean,
We will, what, you don't know. Can you tell us anything about the like TV rights and how that all came to be?
that was crazy. I think I blacked out during that. because my agency is like, I was on deadline. I think I was on deadline for Lost and Lassoed because it was about a year ago at this point. And I got an email from somebody in my agency being like, can I call you? This is important. And I was like, sure. And then told me that like Universal had reached out and was interested in optioning the television rights. And there's not a huge update with that. Um, yes, Tish Cyrus is as cool as she seems, Emily. I see that question. She is, but not a huge update with that, but hopefully soon.
Yeah, I'm sure that. I mean, at what point does like the imposter syndrome kick in? Like, that's got to be so wild.
That kicked in. I released Done and Dusted on June 6th. The imposter syndrome probably kicked in when I sent out ARCs on like May 15th. And it has not exited the building yet, but I'll let you know if it does.
I mean, I hope it does. Like, I hope it exits because you're like a whole ass author. You did the whole thing. Like, that's crazy.
It is really, really crazy. And it never gets old, and I never get tired of it. And I hope that maybe someday the imposter syndrome will go away. But right now, we're just rolling with it.
Well, one of the things that I think is really special and I definitely want to touch on is the Devil's Boot because I think all of them maybe start there or
They
and
do
like
all four.
and it's such a character in itself. So, like, was that intentional from the beginning? And if so, like, why?
Yes, it was intentional that all four start at the Devil's Boot. I wrote all four opening scenes the same day.
Oh, wow.
Uh, yes, and they all kind of take place at different times in the Devil's Boot. Like, right, like Emmy is like prime time. Wes and Ada are like nobody's there except for like the old men, and Brooks, and then obviously No Business happening in Lost and Lassoed, and Wild and Wrangled also starts in the Devil's Boot. The first chapter is the back of Lost and Lassoed, so I can say that out loud, in like midday on a Saturday. And that was just because I love a dive bar. I'm very grateful for my hometown dive bar. I like, there is no place where I feel more at home and more comfortable than like my hometown dive bar. And everywhere I go, like it doesn't matter where you're at in the world, if you can find like a local dive bar, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna have a good time. You're gonna be able to rest. And so yeah, it just like after Rebel Blue Ranch itself, and I'm thinking about the locations that I kind of want this series to explore, because we kind of get a new place in every book. Like the Devil's Boot was very, very quickly born. And the Devil's Boot is my girl. I love her.
Yeah, we need merch for her. If it
There's
doesn't.
some from Rebel and Fleur. She has a Devil's Boot sweatshirt. So
Oh, cute. Okay, perfect. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I would love to know just a couple more things. So, what would you want readers, if they could only take away like one thing from each of these books so far, what would you want that to be?
I think that like you can be loved exactly how you are. I think like with Emmy and Wes in particular, like they both, like Emmy has ADHD, Wes has depression, and neither of those things are a plot device that they have to overcome in order to deserve love. Same with like Teddy and Gus, right? Like they both are going through something. Those things aren't things that they have to overcome. They're not a plot device that they have to in order to deserve love. They get to be loved anyway. They get to be loved as they are. So I think that, love can meet you where you're at.
That's so special. I love that message. Um, okay, before wrapping up, I just wanna I think people would be mad at me if I didn't ask you what is next. So we know we have Wild and Wrangled, but maybe things you can tell us about that and then anything else that you're able to tell us about what you have going on.
Yeah, okay. So Wild and Wrangled comes out April 15th. That's the biggie. Where I'm very, very excited. Cam and Dusty's story was the story I outlined immediately after I was done with Emmy and Luke. I knew it was very important for me to bookend them this way because both Dusty and not Dusty, both Luke and Cam, I think are very similar characters in the way that they found their sense of belonging with the writers. And so I wanted to bookend the series with that. April 15th, tax day. That's going to be great. And then after that, I just turned in the first draft of my next duology. It's called Sweetwater Peak. I'm calling it a contemporary take on a Western Gothic romance. Takes place in this like very I've created this fake Wyoming in my head, and so Sweetwater Peak is 2 hours north of Meadowlark and has a lot more cigarette butts and taxidermy and also ghosts. So I'm very excited for that. Should be coming sometime in 2025, maybe early 2026. When I know that, I'll share because I was late turning it in, but I did turn it in. So yeah, we'll see when it comes, but I'm really excited. It was such a joy to be able to play around in a new place, because right by the time you get to the fourth book in a series, like I made all the rules for myself. Like I knew what was happening and where we were and what the environment was like, and there was so much freedom and kind of traveling 2 hours north and starting over. It was such a joy, and I'm very excited to like dive in and hopefully make that book the best one yet, because it feels very true to me, much like Rebel Blue. I hope I can continue to write books that feel true to me and my heart and my character, while also being special and exciting.
So is that one with the same publisher too?
Sure is. Dial press till I die. Daddy dial. They didn't know what they signed up for, but they got me.
Look at you go, girl. That's amazing. Well, if you're just now joining us, go back and watch it. But also, Lost and Lassoed, it's out. It's a part of it's the third book in the series. We have all three now. Oh, that's the second. They're all here. And just personally, my December choice for my book club is Lost and Lassoed. So if anyone wants to join, please join us. But other than that, Lyla, thank you so much for joining. This has been so much fun.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was a joy. I really appreciate you. Thanks for letting me yap, because that's my favorite hobby. And I don't talk to anybody all day except to the voices in my head. So this is always lovely.
Well, you can come back anytime, even maybe for the new series, we can talk about that too. So I would love
I
that.
would love to start yapping about Sweetwater Peak. I don't know how I'm going to wait till April. I don't know how, but I'm going to do it.
I'm ready. I'm ready whenever you are. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for watching. Bye, guys.
Thank you.